Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Revenue Renegades. Today, I'm excited to welcome Linda Lian, the CEO and co-founder of Common Room. Linda, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Doug. Excited to be here.
So we always ask, what's the founding story? How did you originally come up? What was the original idea for Common Room, and how did you come up with it?
Yeah. If you look at my LinkedIn resume, I've had a very kind of horizontal and leapfroggy career. I started in finance actually, and by virtue of that, was able to become an early stage investor. And that is where, I really got excited about the world of developer tools. It was kind of the heyday of the rise of the cloud and all the modern kind of movements around DevOps. And as a part of that, I think one persistent theme across my career decisions has been this desire to kind of get into the trenches, roll my sleeves up, to move from what I call behind the spreadsheet in more of a finance role to being in the trenches of, building and taking products to market and, understanding and creating customer value. And so I got an opportunity to go from being an early stage investor at Madrona Venture Group in Seattle to leading product marketing at AWS for a couple of the fastest growing tooling lines at the time, serverless containers. And, I think as someone who was a deep student of kind of that open source distribution model of how developers were very much on the cutting edge of, um, you know, how sales was shifting and evolving, right? 20 years ago, you built out a fleet of sales reps, a sales force, you cold called down a lead list. It's account based. You're calling into the main line of some office building. Well, at AWS, I saw in stark relief that, you know, users, they find software, they evaluate it on their own. They're reading reviews from trusted peers, they're asking around. And then by the time they ask for a sales call, 80 to 90% of that sales process is already over. And so, I think as someone who came from developer tools, where I saw the incredible tools that we were building for application developers, but also to gain visibility, monitoring, trigger-based activation capabilities into application health, right? It was kind of astounding to me as almost an outsider to see the lack of visibility, the lack of actionability and intelligence on the customer journey funnel. And I thought to myself, hey, like, if apps are one piece of, what keeps a B2B company alive, the product, what about the customers? What about the customer journey? Why is it so dark? Why is it so obsolete? Why is it that, my service line is growing 300% year over year and there's all these developers engaging with us, and yet I go into Salesforce CRM and see notes left by some sales rep 5 years ago about
Yep.
a call they had with someone who doesn't work there anymore, right? So I wanted to go solve this problem. And from day zero, our vision actually has never changed, which
Yep.
is we want to transform how organizations connect with people. And
Mhm.
that focus on people as primitives has been such an important architecture decision that over the last 5 years of building this company has enabled us to build a really incredible kind of data foundation for this new AI world, and powers a lot of the capabilities and the differentiated kind of solutions that we have on the platform today.
Now, that's really interesting to hear that the kind of the overarching vision remained the same, because I think the entry vector, if I understand correctly, was a little different through communities and then may have shifted. Can you talk about like where that started and where that evolved to?
Yeah. So for folks that don't know, Common Room is an AI native platform that kind of tries to help your go to market team reach the nirvana of knowing who to reach out to, when, with, a contextual personalized message that will convert.
Mhm.
And when we set out to build the technology platform, we thought to ourselves, hey, what's the one signal, right? What's the one engagement signal that is so important to organizations, but they're blind to it? Like they don't even consider it part of their customer journey.
Oh.
Sales and marketing folks don't even know who is engaging. And to me, that was Dart Social,
Oh.
right? It's these unowned and owned digital properties like Twitter, like LinkedIn, like GitHub repos if you're a developer company, like forums, right? Again, if you're a user-based organization where you grow through users, you always have a forum, you always have a community. There's tons of questions and troubleshooting happening there, not just with your existing customer set, but across the entire funnel. Like on LinkedIn of your latest feature release could be one of the earliest awareness and engagement signals that you're ever going to get from a prospect, right? And so we set out to really capture all of the engagement happening in these siloed channels and unifying them into a central place. Now, at that time, COVID, we're a COVID era company. We were built during COVID. Um, all sales and marketing activity was moving digital, right? There was no more in person. And you saw the rise of these community or DevRel teams within sometimes the marketing org, where
Mhm.
they were really on the front lines of engaging in this new kind of frontier model of administering all these various channels, servicing prospects and customers. But the issue is everybody was anonymous. They were fighting fires all day long, but they didn't understand the impact that their work in community or DevRel was having on the customer funnel, on the customer journey, on the business outcomes. And so we said, hey, given we're pretty narrowly focused on these dark social signals, who is the persona that would find the signal most useful?
Hmm.
And so, right or wrong, that's kind of where we started.
Okay.
Um, and interestingly enough, when you talk about the pivot, we didn't pivot our product at all. We actually mostly evolved the persona we were serving from, a primary persona of community and DevRel, which are still customers of ours today, to saying, hey, what if we had an expanded vision of what it means to connect organizations with people? Because now we're getting, sales leaders coming to us and saying, you have all this incredible engagement signal happening on Twitter or LinkedIn or in these dark social channels. Can you also bring in my product usage signals? Because I got a ton of free trial signups and I don't know who they are and I can't triage them appropriately. Can you bring in third party signals like champions that move jobs? Now I want to help my account team prioritize the accounts they should go after. Well, do you have technographic signals? Do you have firmographic signals? Well, here are the really unique niche signals that we need to understand if a rep should be prioritizing an account. And oh, you can only get those through, AI powered LLM scrapers. Can you build that? And so it was a bit of an organic evolution of just bringing in more and more signals and enrichment capabilities onto kind of this person first primitive data foundation. And before we knew it, it had kind of expanded in both the solutions that we can service from ABM to demand gen. But with that, the personas that can really take action off of these insights, the context, and all of these signals.
Got it. Okay, that makes a ton of sense because I think that you know, just expanding kind of it's by the nature of expanding the persona, expanding the kind of use cases that you were encountering, it just kind of exploded the opportunities for the platform. I would imagine as part of this journey, you've got to do a lot of work to go evaluate different data sources, bake them off against each other. Are you choosing those for your customers, or are your customers choosing which kind of data sources they're using themselves?
Yeah, we've done a lot of discovery here, and we talk to customers every day about this pain point. I think the story of ops and RevOps over time has really been one of a lot of manual effort to, do the undifferentiated heavy lifting of trying to bring data points together and unifying them so that the field can take action on it. And we found that, a big part of that undifferentiated lift was in the table stakes act of gathering data. And I think there's a couple different buckets of data. So, I mean, there's obviously your enrichment providers, and those are evolving all the time. I mean, when we first got started, Clearbit was the gold standard, right? Today, there's a lot more options out there. What we find is that most of the folks we talk to, they want to focus on more strategic conversations and initiatives. Most people in ops, they want to be a strategic thought partner to the business. And so we try to I guess, abstract the undifferentiated heavy lifting of enrichment waterfalls. So, instead of rolling your own waterfall enrichment stack, we offer a couple of really prescriptive out of the box setups where, you basically can buy enrichment with us. And the most typical ones that we'll hear about are, Gmail de-anonymization, where we aim to be industry leading. Um, Signal capture, which of course, is where we really started. And then, I think firmographic and technographic is kind of the next frontier of that, where AI can really assist in some of those more niche data points through things like web scraping. I think another set of data that actually is not in the purview of ops, but in history has really been loaded onto the shoulders of reps is account research,
Yeah.
right? Think about how many millions of dollars is spent on sales enablement to try to help a rep understand a complex fire map, or to understand the strategic wedge of why, Nike would pick up the phone right now for your, whatever solution. And that is a place where we're seeing huge unlocks with AI, right? Rumi AI is our research agent. You're able to centrally configure all the various data points that you want your reps to care about, from, who do they compete with? What are their product offerings? How fast are they growing their engineering team?
Right.
What was their strategic initiative that was stated in their last 10K or their earnings calls, and kind of serving that up to reps on a silver platter. We call that kind of scaling tribal knowledge, right? You know that the best 1% reps do this consistently and they really get it. But what about, the rest of the field? And so kind of evening out that insight and context sort of bar, I think is, we're seeing really big kind of productivity unlocks there.
Interesting. So I love your description of the approach, because I recently saw a post where sounds like Clay was I don't know, picking a fight with you per se, but like blocking you from an event, which I thought was interesting. And it sounds like your approach is much more of a, hey, listen, we'll do the heavy lifting for you, and Clay's much more of like a roll your own approach. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair, and ultimately, the I come from a developer background, like, ecosystem is co-opetition.
Right.
So, much respect for all the vendors in the space that are innovating. I think for us, we've identified 3 buckets of problems in the current kind of modern lead funnel process. One is pipeline capture, and enrichment is a core part of that, right? You wanna know who, you wanna know what they did, you wanna know where they work, but that's not where it ends. Far, far from it, right? That's kind of table stakes. Where we really focus a lot of attention is on how do you orchestrate all that data,
Right.
right? Once you have it unified, how do you actually, create plays around certain personas, around certain moments or signals? What does that orchestration layer look like? And then the third pillar that we really focus on, where I don't think um, we see a lot of the other vendors doing this, is on activation by humans against those signals.
Oh,
So Salesforce is not a great user interface
yeah.
for a modern lead prospecting experience, right? The account based model is not great. And certainly it is not an AI native UI where agents and humans are meant to collaborate together.
Mhm.
And so we spend a lot of our resourcing and investments on creating what we call sales workbench. So that is a purpose built workflow layer for SDRs, AEs, AMs, CSMs, and all the humans that need to come together and take action on that data. I think we have a fundamental belief that is persistent, which is pipe gen is a team sport, selling is a team sport. Humans are not going away. People will always buy from people to some extent. But within that, how do we use technology and AI to drive acceleration of that pipeline to make sure you never leave any stone unturned? You're not leaving, obvious prospects on the table. And also sales efficiency. Like, this is a huge conversation right now where I think AI can really assist with letting the humans you have work smarter, not hiring more people to work harder.
Right. It's so interesting because there's so much to unpack here. So obviously, Salesforce is talking a lot about AI, and yet they're also talking. They just announced in their earnings call about how they're hiring 14,000 more sales reps and all this stuff. So it's kind of like throwing a lot of bodies at the problem. The other end of the spectrum, you have the several dozen AI SDR companies that are just saying reps won't, you don't need reps at all. It'll all just be, done by AI for you. And we've seen kind of some of the outcomes of those. Tell me how you think about both ends of those spectrums.
Yes. Again, you'll find that we're very not dogmatic in that we believe every business is unique, every team has their own needs, and those needs change over time. We actually do support AI SDR solutions on our platform. I
Uh,
think our biggest differentiator is the inputs. So LLMs must be powered by incredible inputs, or else you've seen it. It's mainly a AI spam cannon. um, and for us, that's again, our foundational data model and where we get started. Now, AI SDR is a great solution in certain scenarios, right? I mean, it's all about the nuance.
right.
um, Most of our customers are growing their sales teams. No one is contracting today, actually. But most of our customers are also talking to us about AI SDR solutions. So,
Mhm.
how do you reconcile both of those things? Well, it comes down to the strategy and the tactic, right? So, for example, at a $10 billion publicly traded company, what we're doing there is we're taking 150 reps and we're moving them to manage more strategic upmarket accounts. And
Huh.
instead of, you know, either leaving that long tail to fallow and remain untouched, or hiring more junior individuals to go and prosecute that segment, we're doing AI SDR against long tail acquisition. So
Huh.
any organization with less than 100 employees will get more of that AI SDR experience that is still informed by signals, right? Somebody did something. You know that that person expressed some sort of intent. You bucket that, right? Executive buyer hits website, executive buyer hits a pricing page. Speed to lead, super important there, fairly transactional,
Uh-huh.
great use case for an AI SDR, right? The rep sends out a message, says, "Hey, thanks, executive buyer, for checking out pricing. Our pricing can be very complicated. We'd love to grab some time and talk you through it." Right? That's a very easy use case for AI SDR. Um, Other, successful AI SDR use cases can be around inbound qualification. Again, trying to think about those more transactional, less consultative moments where your prospect is really just looking for some answers, or they're trying to talk to somebody, or they're already expressing strong intent to get on a call with you.
Uh-huh.
And then I think, like, with respect to like growing sales teams, I mean, yeah, this is where the AI account research, the always refresh lead lists, the, hey, it's not just black box intent, it's person level intent. It's exactly who you should reach out to at this time because they did something on your LinkedIn channel, or they fired up a free trial, or we're seeing multiple personas from one organization hitting your website in the last 2 weeks, right? Those are signals that we will surface to reps on a silver platter, and
Uh-huh.
there you need some human computational context awareness, right? And so there we see a lot of human in the loop solutions being great, where we'll actually draft the AI message using all these signals, right?
Uh-huh.
Where a rep would have to go cobble them together from various places, or in most cases, they just won't even realize all this is happening.
Right.
Hey, we saw your manager liked our latest LinkedIn launch. We saw that you recently have been, really active in the free trial. Saw that, y'all have been visiting our pricing page. Would love. Seems like time is right. Let's hop on a call. Those are three distinct signals that you don't need a human to collate
Right.
across all these various siloed channels, right? AI can do that for you. And so I don't know if that answers the question, but we're seeing a ton of nuance, not kind of this black and white thinking.
No, absolutely. We have a phrase internally at Coffee that we say you can't have good AI with bad data, and I think that you're the epitome of that, and that you are bringing such rich sources externally and also internally, and kind of stitching those things together in a way and surfacing them up in a way that just most reps don't ever see. I mean, I think that if you look back at when outreach was really taking off in SalesLoft, I think that was the unlock that, like, hey, in the era of where you have to have multiple touches, they were just kind of losing interest at like touch 3 or touch 4 and never getting to that number of touches. I think this next generation that I'm hearing from you is just like, hey, listen, there's so much signal that's available if you just know how to harness it and orchestrate it, that you can surface up these things, as you said, on a silver platter to a rep and be able to say, maybe this is what you want to do today.
Exactly.
How do you think about you mentioned kind of on the inbound side, and the AI SDR piece is interesting because we had Yako was my first guest on the show, and from Winning by Design, and we talked a little bit about the AI SDR piece, and I think his comment aligned with yours, where it was like, if you've got bad process and you've got bad data, then all you're doing is enabling a spam cannon, right? It's not going to be effective that way. Um, but the inbound use case is interesting. How do you think about solutions like we had Amanda on the show from OneMind, right? And they're starting to think about how do you automate even some of those inbound pieces versus having human in the loop on that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think that comes down to, again, the ability to gain insights and context from the noise of the data.
Yep.
Usually it's around dimensions like ICP fit, persona fit, account fit is the first kind of, like uh, barrier of prioritization. Most organizations are not even there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, you get a deluge of inbounds, the rep just, handles it. Is it someone you should even spend 30 minutes with? Who knows? It's a Gmail. God knows. Could be some random person who is just curious. Right? A lot of our customers who are AI companies who are suffering from the champagne problem of incredible amounts of awareness and inbound interest, this is actually an existential problem for them to
Right.
solve as they're trying to scale up and build an enduring business. Um, and so, I think that's kind of like step one. I think, anything that comes out of that, it's really about do you even know, right? As an ops or sales team, are you that dialed in on exactly what those perfect questions are, what those perfect qualifying criteria are? I would say most customers we see are not as advanced. And so they really start with, hey, can we de-anonymize Gmails really well? Can we make sure that we understand the 360 context of this person's engagement with us as well as the account? Is it a right fit persona? Is it the right level? Is it the right function? Is it the right ICP? Is it the right account? If so, let's have a human handle that. If not, is there another path we can send them down?
So you talk a lot about this kind of, right person, right message, right time kind of, combo. What are some of, can you give some anecdotes or some examples of customers using those kind of plays successfully?
Yeah, I'll talk about a couple really popular ones that I think every single company should do. um, the first one is social.
Yeah.
Uh, if you have a company, you have a brand. If you
Right.
have a brand, you're likely doing that on social media. We've seen a huge explosion of social selling even in the last 5 years as a primary tactic for growing and scaling businesses. We're seeing a lot of CMOs and sales leaders really think more about how do we engage socially at scale and, one-on-one at scale. Um, Social signals are some of the highest converting to meeting engagement signals that you could possibly have. Right? Like if you're reaching out quickly on a LinkedIn engagement from somebody that is a buyer or someone you care about, that can convert what we've seen 5x more to a meeting than your traditional channel. But you got to be fast because the thing about behavioral based signals is that they decay. A
Yeah.
website visit today is worth a lot more than a website visit 2 months ago,
Right.
right? And so, I think like social is certainly one. I think everyone is trying to think about, hey, how do we get those signals? How do we make sure we know who they are? And then I think that right now a big conversation is like, well, how do we do reach out at scale, right?
Yeah.
How do we show up in their uh, LinkedIn inbox in a DM, right, when that engagement happens in a way that's not creepy and customer centric. I think the second play that everybody should be doing, and you would be surprised at how many organizations don't do this, is website visits. If you
No.
have a company, you have website visitors, right? If you have built out pages around solutions, that is incredible intent into what a prospect could be trying to solve from a problem perspective. Um, And, I'll say most people don't have that signal set up in a way that is consumable by the field.
Mm,
It, is collected somewhere, it goes into Snowflake only to, die there in the mess of data. Maybe somebody in marketing ops or marketing is looking at it, but website visits can be one of the most rich, high intent signals that you could ever get from a prospect, especially when they're visiting pages like pricing, right?
got it.
And then the third one that I think everybody should be doing is champions that move jobs. So because of our person first view of the world, we actually track your entire job history and we know when you've changed jobs, right? And so when you think about, at Salesforce, like, oh my God, how many people are bringing Salesforce with them,
Right.
right? Or at any organization, I think being able to kind of start from another warm touch, to not treat that longtime customer as if they were a stranger because they're now a new contact record in your CRM, to have that context persist across multiple jobs, knowing that people change jobs on average every 2 years today. Nobody is staying at the same job for 20 plus years as they did 20 years ago. And
Right.
also the stat that Gartner has, which is most executive buyers, they'll spend the vast majority of their budgets within the first 6 months of joining a new job.
Mhm.
What a great moment to reach out and start, building that new relationship, but on the foundations of, an existing one.
So just double clicking on a couple of those. The first one about LinkedIn, are you talking about people who are kind of liking, commenting on your posts, things like that for either you as an executive of the brand or the brand itself, and then engaging from there? Was that the play?
Yeah, so it's really anything, right? Like our customers will put out ads on LinkedIn where individuals engage with those ads. Who are they? It's
Right.
hard to programmatically figure out. It's your company page as you're, putting out news out there. Are people starting to engage with that? It could be things like competitor listening, right? Ecosystem listening is what we call it. Are they a market or aware of your competitors and their posts? And so there's a lot around, social, Twitter, LinkedIn, Reddit, other owned and unowned digital channels where Slack groups, if you're a more technical tool, can
Yep.
be huge, right? We have some customers with Slack communities with 100,000 people or more, where nobody knows who's in there. Like,
Yeah.
what a missed opportunity to, understand a core part of your channel strategy.
So I think what I'm hearing is a big part of that is just not having to have you. It's kind of the push versus pull, right? So not having to go in and say, oh, who engaged with these posts in these 5 different channels or whatever number of channels on socially and other places you're dealing with, but having that brought to you and served up to you through the Common Room platform. Is that right?
Yeah, and at the person level, right? I
Yeah.
can say, "Hey, Doug liked our latest LinkedIn post and he's in our Slack group and he just fired up a free trial."
Right.
That's 3 very disparate things about Doug that before, our platform or platforms like ours could never have been served up on a silver platter to a rep in a cohesive way.
And on the website visitor stuff, I presume you're talking about the more recent phenomena of kind of person identification. How do you find? I recently had an interesting experience with the former CMO at LinkedIn, where we were using one of those solutions, and she showed up and came in Slack that she had visited our website, and I just took a screenshot of that and sent it to her. Said like, "Hey, great to see you. Like, we should catch up sometime." And she was freaked out. She was just like, "How the hell? Like this is creepy. This is weird." How do you encourage people to kind of engage or act on that kind of information?
Yeah, it's about the how, right? I think some of the more like rules-based things can be things like they hate your pricing page.
Yeah.
That's a really strong, intense signal where you almost have a right to reach out.
Yep.
I think that this is funny. We recently closed a deal with a large publicly traded company, and the CEO is the final signer. And I saw him all over our website, and I actually emailed him, and I was like, "Hey, I know you're the final signer, and the contract is sitting with you. Like, really appreciate you checking us out." And he was like, "Oh my gosh, how did you do this? Like, I thought I opted out of all the things that I was supposed to opt out of to not get tracked this way." And I thought a lot about that question. It's kind of like I mean, at the end of the day, like I could Google your name, I could Google your Gmail, I could find out audacious amounts of information about you on Google.
Right.
So, so it's already out there, right? I think it's just applying it in different scenarios and making sure, obviously, that we're GDPR compliant, we're SOC 2 compliant, we have global customers. I think data privacy, the ability to, make sure that we're managing again the undifferentiated heavy lifting of sourcing this data and
Yeah.
making sure it is legal and secure is going to be another big kind of work stream in the age of AI. It's like you can't avoid the fact that identity data is everywhere now. Like it's happening to you whether you like it or not, but how can we make sure that, we're there's lines that we don't wanna cross. For example, I think what LinkedIn recently did about LinkedIn scraping was really powerful,
Yeah.
and, we have a really close partnership with them, and we always have from the start, and that is a great example where, I think a line was drawn, and, I think more lines will be drawn, and it's our goal as vendors to make sure we're operating within those constraints.
Yeah, my last company was acquired by LinkedIn, and when you get inside, and I've posted about this, so I feel okay talking about it publicly. There's basically a stack rank list of who's violating their terms of service, right? And so, if you are doing something that violates LinkedIn's terms of service and you think you're not on that list, think again. It's really a question of how overt the actions are and how much you're kind of interfering with the customer experience because it's very members first is always the mantra there. How they deliver a great experience and also their business. So I think that it was very interesting to see what they took in their actions against Apollo and others in terms of. I'm sure there were cease and desist letters and a lot of things that preceded that, but that was such a public move to say, "Hey, something is going on here that we don't agree with." So yeah, I think it's very important, having been on the inside and the outside of LinkedIn in particular, to stay on the right side of that equation for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing in some of our eval cycles just vendors not passing through AppSec, right? Like, I think AI, data, privacy, all this is going to be, oft talked about in the coming years.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about, obviously a lot of RevOps role, and it's interesting thinking just about like the rise of RevOps over the last few years, and then kind of what is their role today. A lot of it is around this kind of data gathering, system integration, kind of answering questions that may not be as strategic and more tactical things. How do you see that role evolving?
Yeah, we see a couple of different silos in the go-to-market function that we believe need to be brought a lot closer together. The first is marketing and sales. I
Yeah.
think it's really interesting that marketing has their own perspective of the customer journey, siloed in tools like legacy intent tools. And sales doesn't place the same value in like things like black box keyword search intent as an example, right? And so, I think a big part of what we aim to do is bring everybody into the same room, into the same set of data that is at the person level, rolled
Mhm.
up into an account. Because
Yep.
that unified data layer is in some respects how you can bring two teams together that frankly are operating off of different data sets and
Yep.
have different workflows and different understandings of what's going on. The next silo that we see is actually between RevOps and sales or the field. I think RevOps has so long focused on this job of cobbling data together, sourcing data, figuring out which data is right, getting requests from the field that phone numbers are bad, right? This is a typical experience of an ops team. Like everybody suddenly says we can't hit our numbers because our phone numbers are really bad, and then you send ops into a multi-week, multi-month journey to now go get three phone number providers, figure out how to like stitch it all in, such that they really have not been able to, I think, flex into the more important parts of the role, which
Uh-huh.
is, hey, how are you actually driving that sales efficiency, that pipe acceleration, that activation of that data for your reps? Right? Are the reps actually finding a lot of these tools useful? Are they adopting them? Are you getting the results that you're seeking for the business and for your partners? What I see in the opportunity for AI and ops is again to reduce a lot of that manual toil to start making those table stakes things like unification of data, signal collection, and even orchestrating all of that data a lot easier with simple Lego-like and modular workflows so that they can become a far more strategic asset to the activation piece and ultimately, get closer to the outcomes. We work with customers where ops will think what a certain set of things should be done. And then you talk to reps and they're like, that's not how I sell. And so we deal with that all the time. It's like, can we bring those two teams together as well?
Yeah, the marketing and sales divide is as old as time, but I think at the end of the day, for me, it is always saying if you're operating off of a different set of goals and a different set of data, that there's no way that you can kind of keep those things aligned. So I think I would imagine you're dealing with not just technical limitations, but a lot of cultural, internal politics limitations and issues as you're deploying your solution across certain organizations.
Absolutely. Especially in enterprises, I always say we're a technology provider. We are here to help you partner on change management, but this is a cross-functional effort. This is not something we can affect alone in one team, right?
For sure. Yeah. There's only so much therapy you can provide, right? So one question is, you talked about those were great, by the way, very practical examples of kind of the three things all companies should be doing. Are there surprising or counterintuitive buyer signals that you've seen, companies using that most other companies overlook?
Yeah, the biggest one that we've noticed where in some respects like AI can do better is product usage signals.
Oh,
Um, I think a lot of times people think more product usage means more buyer intent.
yep.
We actually found through our work with a couple industry leading PLG companies that sometimes high or healthy levels of product usage makes them more averse to talking to a human.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're kinda like, "Hey, we got it. We don't need to talk to you. We're
Right.
ripping and roaring."
Yeah. Yep.
And so one of the signals that we identified with a leading, developer company that's also PLG is, actually when costs start to spike.
Uh,
Um because usually, that's a great moment for someone to go in with a more consultative approach and say, "Hey, you know what? Your costs are spiking across these various workloads. We can actually migrate you to our enterprise product where you're going to be able to have a lot better cost controls, blah, blah, blah." We also see a lot of our customers on the product usage signal front trying to really move from this transactional overages based model where, how many emails have you gotten where they're like, you are over your C provisions, like you should talk to me. Or, like, and you don't pick up the phone, right? Because you're like, how long can I get away with not talking to you? And so we hear this a lot in our customer base. It's like, how can we evolve our usage of product signals as a key signal from transactional and transaction based to more consultative, more strategic? So I think that is one signal that is oft misunderstood, maybe because I think, common sense says more usage equals more money.
Right. Right. And do you see most of those signals coming out of tools like Amplitude and Segment and those kind of platforms, or are you specifically putting your own code into those platforms to track usage?
Yeah, so tech stack is the ecosystem of tech stacks are really interesting. We've actually taken an approach to mainly go through the data warehouse. So whether that's Snowflake or BigQuery, most companies do have that as their ultimate source of truth, and then they will pump that data into Amplitude or Segment or a downstream system for further activation on specific use cases. And so we try to go to the source in part because that reduces the burden on our R&D team to build deep native integrations with, a ton of different tools, which obviously we want to get to, but it's always a battle of ruthless trade-offs.
It is for sure. I know we're coming up on time, so I just had a few more questions for you. Maybe shift gears. Like, tell me about yourself. Like, what do you like to do for fun?
That's a hard question to answer. What do I like to do for fun outside of thinking about AI and sales? No, I always like to say I'm a bit of a Luddite. Like outside of my job in tech, I love everything that doesn't have to do with tech. So art, reading, paper books,
Uh-huh.
gardening, being in nature, digging in the dirt with my hands, being outside, anything where there is no screen involved is, kind of my happy place outside of work.
Nature has come up a maybe not surprising, but a large number of times in the answer to that question, so thank you for sharing.
It's pretty dope.
It is pretty dope, yes. I've started to color code my calendar and be like, "Which meetings can I actually just throw my AirPods in and go take a walk around the
Yes.
neighborhood?" I live in Sausalito and I'm just
Oh,
like,
that's
"Oh my
beautiful.
god, just like some sunshine. This is nice."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Puts into perspective what we're trying to build. I'm like, "How did the world do this?"
yeah, yeah, yeah. We're just doing something very small when it's in the grand
Exactly.
scheme of things. What's something somebody would be surprised to know about you?
Ooh, I think what they would be surprised to know is I th I'm funny. Like, I try not to take things too seriously, whether it's my position or what we're trying to do, like trying to find the humor in some of the day-to-day battles and vicious competition and all the ups and downs of building a startup. It's like, can we laugh about this? Is it that big of a deal? Right? Like, let's be bold, let's take risks, and if it doesn't work out, there's no bodily harm to me yet.
Yeah,
I'm still hanging out on Zoom.
yeah.
So I think maybe what people would be surprised by is I'm a risk taker. Like I don't, think too much about it, and I hope it doesn't get me in trouble, but, yeah. Gotta have some fun with it.
Yeah, I think all entrepreneurs are risk takers, but I think there are not fewer have a sense of humor about it because they feel like I especially find in I'm saying this as the gray haired older guy, in younger founders or first time founders, what's refreshing to hear that from you is to a lot of them think that like I have to be perfect as the CEO or I have to show that I'm working 100 hours a week or I have to show, and the reality is like there are a few things you do as a CEO that are really important. And if it feels like a grind, it's not sustainable, right? So everybody's
Mhm.
got to be like, I love the people I'm working with. I love the mission. I'm having fun. We kick back every once in a while. Even as a remote company, like we try to get together once a quarter, face to face, and
Yeah.
do stuff. And that part is so much of looking back on that time. My measure of success has always been like, hey, I want people to look back at this period of time and be like, that was the most, rewarding part of my career, not just financially. I mean, just like personally. Like I really loved what I was working on. I learned a ton. I love the people I was working with. I had a blast. And oh, by the way, it was financially successful as well.
Exactly. That's the perfect summation of, I think, what we're all seeking to, deliver to our teams.
All right. What is let's just geek out on products for a while. Besides your own product, you're not allowed to cheat that way. What's one product that you love to use and why?
Oh, man. Okay, this is very basic of me, but I'm, like, obsessed with these Stanley Cups. I don't know why, but it's the way it holds the ice, the volume of the water, the coldness that it gets to, like, those things just hit for me. So the design flaw is this doesn't fit in most cup holders in your car, so it's
Just
my
crazy.
husband hates it. He's like, "You've been influenced." But it's about the product itself, the water. It's about what it does to the water.
That's amazing. Yeah, I have to admit, I just saw this thing taking off, when the Stanley Cup fad started, and I was like, "I don't get it at all." It just seems like
Right?
an overpriced, water bottle.
Yeah.
But similar to you, I've had many people who are just like, really have a emotional attachment to that product, and so they obviously, as a
Yeah.
product person, I appreciate when somebody nails it like that.
Yeah, I was always dehydrated. I wasn't a water drinker, and now I'm, like, hydrated, it's saving my life.
Thank you, Stanley. Thank you. Yeah. And finally, just how can listeners keep in touch with you and support the mission of Common Room?
Yeah, check out our website, www.commonroom.io. You can get a demo, chat with us, but also follow me on LinkedIn. I post a lot about modern go-to-market tactics and strategies that I'm learning from our customers and, startup building observations and thoughts about the current milieu. So if you're interested in those things, DM me, connect with me, add me there. I'm pretty active.
All right. I've sent you a connection request. Thank you, Linda. This has been a blast. I so appreciate the time, and I know that our listeners are going to get a ton of value out of this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Doug.